Welcome to the December 11th Edison, our school board meeting here at Edison Middle School. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Blattner? Here. Mr. Derby?
Here.
Ms. Kolovitz?
Here.
Mr. Long?
Here.
Mr. Paulson?
Here.
Mr. Rutledge?
Here.
Mr. Hamel?
Here. Mr. Long, would you lead us in the pledge? Thank you. Right now, we'll hear communication from our host school. So, Dr. Schuler, could you introduce Ms. Rachel Bednar?
Be happy to. So it's my pleasure to introduce a principal here at Edison Middle School, and that's Rachel Bednar. Rachel, please give the welcome from the host school.
Good evening, Board of Education, district leaders, community members, and staff. I'm happy to see several of my staff members here tonight as well. My name is Rachel Bednar, principal here at Edison, and I'm delighted to welcome you here this evening. I'm thrilled that so many of our Edison staff members are here as well. I feel incredibly fortunate every single day to be able to learn and lead alongside so many incredible professionals. I hope you enjoyed the caroling as you entered. When I first learned that we would be hosting the December meeting, my very first thought was to ask our choir director, Mr. Kyle Grace, if he would be interested in having his talented singers get us in the holiday spirit. Our December concerts, from choir to band to orchestra, are always crowd pleasers. I would like to thank Mr. Grace and Mr. Petrando, as well as our choir members who joined us tonight for sharing their holiday joy with us. I'd also like to give a shout out to our art teacher, Mrs. Jodeci Rudica, who encourages her art students every year to create our holiday card. I have one for each of you at your place. Each year at Edison, we align our work to the district vision and work plans. This year, we are making huge strides on many fronts. Our ELA teachers have dedicated their energy to piloting 2 different sets of instructional materials over these last 2 quarters. Our math teachers have continued to incorporate building thinking classroom strategies while helping our students master the concepts in the IM curriculum. Our social studies teachers are engaged in deep conversations as they begin the process of updating their curriculum. Our science and elective teachers have been meeting with the representatives of Perkins and Will to design classroom environments that will provide students with the best possible learning opportunities. And all the teachers are continually focused on building positive relationships with and among our students, so our Panthers feel connected to our school. We have a wide range of clubs, activities, and sports to meet the various student interests at Edison. One of the areas where students can develop and showcase their skills and talents and build strong connections is in the performing arts. Tonight, we have 3 members of our choir, Lucy Bickle, Mila Bramwell, and Eva Rodriguez, who would like to share their thoughts about what it feels like to participate in curricular and extracurricular performing arts opportunities at Edison. Lucy, Mila, and Eva. Ooh. They missed their cue. Oh, here they are. Come on down, ladies. Who's first? Hi, this is Eva.
Hi, y'all. I'm Eva Rodriguez. I'm an 8th grader here at Edison. I'm so honored to talk to you guys today. I love show choir a lot, and I'm so honored to be part of this choir, especially since only so few middle schools have the opportunity to have show choir. I'm also very privileged to be part of Edison's band as well. I love ending my school day with hearing the beautiful sounds of the extremely talented band. Both show choir and band have made me love the arts and flourish educationally and socially. Show choir and band expand my creativity in class and form so many new friendships outside of class. In class, I participate more and feel more confident. Outside of class, I have made some of my closest friends. All of this leads back to show choir and band.
Hi, my name is Lucy. I'm in orchestra and show choir. I've been playing violin since I was 2 and have loved singing all my life. But show choir allows me to sing and dance and just have fun. It also allows me to perform in front of an audience.
Hi, my name is Mila Bramwell. I'm in show choir and choir. I've been singing and dancing since I was 3 years old. I love show choir because I get to dance again. After the pandemic, I lost touch with dance, and I was ecstatic to find show choir. I get to spend more time with my friends and more time singing with one of my favorite choir directors, Mr. Grace.
All right, thank you, Lucy, Mila, and Eva. And now, under the direction of Mr. Kyle Grace and Mr. Joey Petrando, the choir will perform one more holiday song for you. Thank you, Electric Youth. If you have never seen this group perform, their show choir competitions are absolutely awesome. The Choral Classic is when? March 14th? A show choir mom over there. March 14th. So yes, if you have the opportunity to get over to Wheaton, Warrenville South and watch both the middle schoolers perform on Friday night and the high schoolers also perform exhibition on Friday night, it's awesome. So I highly recommend. So thank you all, and thank you, Electric Youth.
That was just fantastic. Thank you for coming out tonight. Board members, are there any modifications to the agenda? All right, hearing none, we're going to move into public comment. We have one person signed up for public comment tonight. Thank you for taking the time to share your feedback and thoughtful focus on our students, school district, and community. It's the board's practice to not directly discuss communication from the community until its context is understood and the information is explored. It's not our intention to signal a lack of interest, and we appreciate you understanding. Depending on the number of people signed up to speak during public comment, Board Policy 2.230 enables the time per speaker to be reduced from 3 to 2 minutes, allowing more people to share their perspective. Tonight, we will not have to reduce the time for each speaker. To maintain confidentiality, the board asks that any matters concerning personnel or students be communicated to the board privately. When we meet, it's important that we all treat each other with kindness and respect. We set an example for our schools and desire to honor that by being courteous in our public comments. Let's work together to lead with positive intent so that our democratic process reflects the best of our community. To help us follow up if needed, please provide your name and if you're a resident of the district. To ensure everyone has a chance to speak, Ms. Kulovitz will raise her hand when 15 seconds remains as a reminder to wrap up your thoughts. At the end of our agreed time, I'll respectfully ask you to allow the next speaker to begin. Thank you for investing time to attend the board meeting tonight and share your thoughts and encouragement with our district. That being said, our only public speaker tonight is Heather Gordon.
Good evening, board members, Dr. Schuler, district staff. members of the community, and my fabulous Edison colleagues. As you said, my name is Heather Gordon, and yes, I am a Wheaton resident. It is my privilege to speak to you this evening as a teacher here at Edison and as a member of the WWEA. This year marks my 28th year as an Edison Panther, and I couldn't be more proud to call it my school home. Never could I have imagined the impact this place would have on me as an educator, as a parent, and as a human being. However, Edison is much more than just a place. It is a community, a family. I have been beyond blessed to have administrators that have supported and encouraged me every step of the way. The people with whom I work are absolutely some of the best. Over the years, we have experienced wonderful celebrations and heartbreaking losses. We have laughed together and cried together. I have witnessed their unwavering resilience as we navigated through the ups and downs of a pandemic. Through it all, we all knew that we had each other as a source of support and a shoulder on which to lean. I have also had the unique perspective of being a parent of Edison students. When our daughter was in 5th grade at Lincoln Elementary, my husband and I knew that we wanted to move before she started middle school. As we looked for houses, there wasn't a question of whether or not she would attend Edison. It was a must. As we all know, the middle school years can be quite challenging. So I wanted our children to benefit from our amazing staff, and that definitely was the case. I am pleased to say that both our daughter, now a sophomore in college, and our son, now a sophomore at Wheaton Warrenville South, had great experiences at Edison, and I am beyond grateful for the influence of their Edison teachers. Ooh, is that me making that noise? But what would my days be like without the faces of my 6th graders? I remember the last day of school, my first year teaching. I absolutely sobbed, which is really not a surprise for me. I wondered how I would endure that loss each year. While the tears have diminished over the years, my students always leave with a little piece of my heart. As a teacher, clearly my job is to teach, but I have also learned so much from my students. I have seen them persevere and overcome obstacles. This has been especially evident in the last few years as I have had the opportunity to have students that are multilingual learners. The growth that they show in a year's time is truly astonishing and inspirational. When that light goes on and things all of a sudden click, there is nothing better. In addition, I have seen my students develop a curiosity for learning. I have seen them collaborate with their peers and lead discussions, and we have shared many laughs together along the way. While there are some days that may be challenging and not go exactly as planned, each day really is a gift to be able to impact my students and in turn be impacted by them. As I reflect upon the last 28 years, I think of the song For Good from one of my favorite musicals. You may have heard of it, as it is also recently a released movie by the name of Wicked.
Ms. Gordon, we'll have to ask you to wrap up, please.
I am almost right there. You'll be with me like a handprint on my heart because I knew you. I have been changed for good. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you this evening. I wish you all a very healthy and happy holiday season. And as we say here at Edison, shine on.
Thank you. Dr. Schuler on the superintendent's report.
Absolutely. So one, just quick shout out in recognition, Heather, who obviously just shared the perspective of the board. She did something at the beginning of this year that was a new experience for us. Mr. Biskin wanted to bring both a teacher voice and a student voice to our new staff welcome. And so Heather joined us and did an absolutely phenomenal job welcoming our new staff. So I just want to acknowledge Heather and Carla also welcomed our new staff as well from the student perspective. Did an incredible job. So going to add something new this evening to the superintendent report and hope to do this at every meeting moving forward. The board knows, you've heard several times from Mrs. Murphy, that focusing on pathways, career pathways, and especially workplace learning experiences for our students is something that's been a very intentional focus, looking for opportunities to give students authentic either internship or shadowing experiences. And so that would not be possible if not for both partners in the business community and some of our municipal partners. And so we want to recognize somebody at each of our meetings moving forward that's been instrumental to that work. And so I'd like to invite tonight Mayor Dave Brummel from City of Warrenville and Christina White from the City of Warrenville to join me up at the podium. So I think the last 2 years, right? This was year 2. the city of Warrenville has done a shadow day, and they've not only put together an opportunity, but really done, I think, an incredible job of laying out a really authentic day for students from Wheaton Warrenville South to join and to be a part of it. Caitlin, I know you were a part of that this year from the student perspective. And so, again, just heartfelt thank you for taking the time to do that and providing a really authentic experience. I asked Christina, when she graciously accepted the invitation to join, if she would just share a couple of words about that experience of hosting our students and certainly what the partners joined. And Caitlin, I'm going to ask you to do the same. I didn't tell you that, but all right.
Surprise. So thank you for having us here tonight and allowing us to be part of your meeting. As Dr. Schuler said, it's been 2 years that we've been part of this program, and it really started as a passion project, selfishly, because we wanted to highlight what local government had to offer as a career pathway to students. We recognize that most don't know that we exist if we're doing our job right, which is a good thing. But when we look at hiring and recruiting for the next generation of talent, we wanted a presence with our community members, and we have been very fortunate to have the students at Wheaton Warrenville South participate for the last 2 years. Phenomenal students. I couldn't say anything more gracious than that. They have been a breath of fresh air. Our staff has enjoyed and engaged in this program in a way that I just couldn't be happier about. You have turned out fantastic high schoolers, so we appreciate that, but thank you for letting us be a part of it. And Mayor, did you want to say something?
Yes, I would thank you also for this partnership. The staff absolutely love this opportunity. You know, when you have good people and they're good at what they do, what they enjoy maybe more than their work is sharing what they do with somebody else and explaining what they do. And every single person on our staff truly enjoyed being able to have that opportunity. It was very nice at the end of the day when I asked the students, what did you learn? Everyone had something substantive to add to the conversation that they learned from the day. I got an email from one of the parents, one of the mothers about this long, who said her daughter talked about the experience all night. That's what we're aiming for, is to get the word out that there are opportunities in local government for good people to do good work. And so this is very exciting. It is Christina's passion. She gets 100% of the accolades for this. All I did was say, yeah, good idea, go ahead and do it, and she took off, and she wants to expand it, and I fully endorse that possibility. So we have enjoyed very much having this opportunity. Thank you for that, and we hope to continue to do it and expand on it.
Thank you. And Caitlin, student perspective, can you just a couple words about the experience?
So I said this at the end of the day when I was there, and I continue to say it. I would recommend this experience to anybody and everybody, especially if you're interested in government or not. I had an amazing experience, and I said this while I was there. Everybody we talked to was so passionate about what they did, and I think that sometimes it can unfortunately be rare, but every single person we talked to genuinely loved their job, and I think that that's a really beautiful thing to be a part of in the community, but then to also show students and young people. Shout out to Mayor Brummel, who I got to have a chat with. You're a great man and a great mentor, and it was a pleasure for me to have that experience. But also the other students who were there, who I've spoken to, they also had a really great experience, just seeing what other people do and really narrowing down what we're deciding to do with our futures. So thank you, guys.
Awesome, thank you. Mr. Smith, would you mind coming up here as well? So again, our career pathways opportunities wouldn't be possible without Mr. Smith really helping to lead the way. So I have a certificate or frame that I'm going to ask you to present to Christina and Mayor Brummel, and then we're gonna take a picture. But on behalf of District 200, thank you both for being valuable community partners. We really appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to student ambassador reports. So looks like we're going to start with Wheaton North. Carla, looks like you're up first.
Okay, so we wanted to highlight Junior Ann Queto, who was featured on the Chicago Tribune for all of her amazing volunteer work. So she's been doing a lot to collect like food for families in need and stuff that now that the holiday season is coming up. So she actually had an article featured, which is really cool. So we really wanted to highlight that. We also had senior Abby Matos, who was named the TCD Student of the Month in the multilingual program. And our theater program also started a seat campaign in order to fundraise for their shows. So you can get your name on one of the seats. And then we also had the Breakfast of Champions this month, which highlights students that teachers like nominate and they recognize for their leadership or effort in the classroom. So we had that this month, and we highlighted 25 students that like each Wheaton North teacher nominates them, and then they give a speech as to like why they were accepted for that award. And we also have done lots of stuff with Christmas sharing this month. So we did lunch donations where like student council was walking around and just seeing if anyone was willing to donate. And then we did pictures with Santa, which will be featured in a second. So like you had to pay, I think it was like $1, and you could take a picture with Santa, and all of that went towards Christmas sharing. So that was really fun. And then we had a raffle at lunch as well, where you can win a whole pizza for your table if you contribute to Christmas sharing. And the Flying Tigers basketball team had their Pack the Gym event, which also went towards that. And we also have the holiday concert on December 17th. So here are all of our pictures with Santa that we used to fundraise for Christmas sharing. So that was really fun for students to participate in during lunch.
At Wheaton North, we also had our art show last week, which was a huge success. In the Duquesne art show, we had 3 students who were highlighted for their good work. And then today we had our blood drive where students went and donated blood and saved a lot of lives. I think if you donated blood for 5 minutes, they said that you gave enough blood to save 3 lives. And we had over 70 students to donate blood today. And we have our final exam cram coming up, I think, on Friday this week before finals next week. And for athletics, we've started our winter sports. Boys swim won their recent meet against York High School. Wrestling won their dual meet versus Lake Park, which was also their senior night. And dance, cheer, boys and girls basketball all compete this week and over the weekend.
Alrighty, so over at South, we just did our last meeting with Tiger Mentoring, where the upperclassmen go into access classrooms just to kind of help acclimate the freshmen. So this week we're going in for our last week to say our goodbyes, but definitely a really good experience for our upperclassmen and our freshmen. We also hosted the Breakfast of Champions, where each department decided to highlight a student who's just been that's been doing really exceptional work in their classes. And then we also chose our leadership student of the month, who was Sean Vital. So he was also recognized. And we're also beginning our finals prep with finals next week, where everyone's hopefully not cramming, but really getting those grades up. So
We also had our semi-annual art show. I would like to shout out a couple people here. Shout out to our very own Max Dudek for winning the Principals Award in the show and Best in Show overall by viewer vote. We also had James Karinsky from our school also win the Principals Award. And we had a photography piece win the Superintendent Award from Dr. Schuler. Our French classes are doing a classic holiday dessert, and the culinary classes are making gingerbread houses to celebrate the holidays. We have concerts coming up from our orchestra, our band, and our choir. And the show choir classics are performing for Weesbrook Elementary School soon.
All right. Whoop. Can you hear me? All right. So, it's going to roll off the table. So, I'm here to talk about our winter sport kickoff. So we had a big parade go around 7th hour, where representatives of all winter sports, activities, clubs, higher level students got to walk around the school during 7th hour. We gave out candy, some coupons, played some Christmas music, got people hype up for Winter Week. It was great. At the very least, it got people a brain break from their 7th hour. But overall, everyone had a great time. We had our Pack the Gym on the 3rd of December, hosted by Hubble Middle School. Apparently, it was packed, and it was attended by both Principal Campos and Cornthauer, so that's great to hear. Everyone had a great time. With our Tiger Drive, so I'm actually going out of order here. I know it says Winter Week and Tiger Drive, but I'll start with the Tiger Drive because it blends into Winter Week. So with the Tiger Drive, basically we're hosting a competition between all 7th hour classes. It's still going on right now to raise the most money. So we set our goal at roughly $3 per student, which means our goal is $6,000. So we divided it by class. So a class with 30 people, for example, their goal would be $90. And if you meet your goal, you get to go to, I'm going to talk about it in a second, but you get to go to an assembly on Friday. And then all the donations go to the People's Resource Center. And then just overall for Winter Week, we had a bunch of dress-up days. Ugly sweaters was today. There was a severe lack of ugly sweaters today. Everyone said they didn't have one. But overall, the participation has been pretty good. Just lack of sweaters today. We also had our Holla Duck Hunt. So it's actually something new we started where we hide ducks around the during the during the passing period, and you can find some ducks for prizes. And then, like I mentioned before, on Friday, we have an assembly for classes who reach their goal for donating, and it features the Shy City Tumblers. So we're very excited for that. So, yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it. All right. Thank you, ambassadors. I appreciate that. On to our consent agenda. So here are the following items included in our consent agenda tonight. Acceptance of gift to Sandburg Elementary School Giving Tree Program. Acceptance of gift to Wheaton North High School Cheerleading Program. Approval of curriculum content for AP Pre-Calculus course. Approval of curriculum content for dual credit social media marketing course. Approval of curriculum credit for dual credit curriculum content for dual credit Introduction to Literature course. Approval of curriculum content for Engineering Essentials High School course. Approval of adding Roth contribution option to 403B and 457 tax sheltered annuity plans. Approval of xerographic bond paper bid. Approval of print shop paper bid. Approval of 5-year MIST access point license extension. Approval of bills payable and payroll. Approval of minutes, November 13th, 2024, the regular meeting open and closed, and approval to destroy recordings of closed sessions prior to July 2023 as allowable by law. Approval of personnel report to include employment, resignation, retirement, and leave of absence of administrative, certified, classified, and non-union staff. Board, are there any items that members want removed from the consent agenda? Dr. Schuler, do you have any additional information?
No, other than the first two things on your consent agenda, gifts that you're accepting in your green folders. Diana's provided your 6-month summary. You've accepted about $165,000 worth of really generous gifts, so I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, that's incredible. We're very grateful. Very grateful. Board, any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I needed a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Kulovitz, second by Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Kulovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Rutledge?
Yes.
Ms. Blattner?
Yes.
Mr. Derby?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Hanlon?
Yes. We're on to the facilities approval consent agenda, and here are the items included in the facilities consent agenda. Approval of fiscal year 25 school maintenance project grant submission. Approval of bids for 2025 facility improvements, flooring removal and replacement at Westbrook Elementary School. Approval of bids for 2025 facility improvements, paving and concrete at Wheaton North High School, paving and seal coating projects at Hubble Middle School, Johnson Elementary School, and Madison Elementary School. Approval of bids for 2025 facility improvements, roofing projects at Washington Elementary School, Wheaton North High School, and Wheaton Warrenville South High School. And approval of statements of completion from the DuPage County Regional Office of Education for Bauer Elementary School, Hubble Middle School, and Weisbrook Elementary School summer 2024 projects. Board, are there any items members want removed from the facilities approval consent agenda? Hearing none, Dr. Schuler?
Yeah, I think this would be appropriate time, Mr. Paulson, if you want to give the Facilities Committee report, because most of these things were discussed at the Facilities Committee.
We had our meeting December 4th, and I think the three middle ones for approving work for summer 2025 kind of completes, other than the playground work, which I think is next meeting, completes our bidding for all the work that we approved earlier this summer. We're about 1.2 million, I believe, under budget so far. And we also discussed, not really on the agenda tonight, but we also discussed the middle school capital projects, laid out kind of the steps being taken over the next 6 months or so. I think that's pretty much it. And then the last item really wraps up the summer 2024 work with the completion of the occupancy permits. So, any questions on that? Did I miss anything?
All right, thank you. Board, hearing no questions or comments, I need a motion and a second to approve the facilities approval consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, we're on to the policy posting consent agenda, and I emphasize posting. So this is the approval to post these policies. So we have 19 revised policies for approval to post for community review tonight. They are 2.105, 2.120, 4.30, 4.60, 4.170, 5.10, 5.20, 5.90, 5.120, 5.125, 5.230, 6.60, 6.135, 6.270, 7.10, 7.100, 7.180, 7.200, and 8.10. Any items that board members want removed, or would you like me to read those again? No? Okay. Anything you want removed? All right. Dr. Schuler, any additional comments?
I think Mrs. Kulovitz probably be appropriate time to give the HR Policy Committee report, because these were all reviewed at that meeting.
Certainly. While the list of policies looks long, many of the edits were more editorial in nature. We did have questions on a few of them. Those are more specifically outlined in the report, which is in the board packet. And I know at least for one of them, Dr. Schuler was following up on a question that Ms. Blattner had. One thing I did want to point out is thanks to Alyssa on the website, if you go to menu, you can see right on that page if there are any policies that are open for public comment. That also applied to calendar and curriculum and anything that's open for public comment, so it's very accessible there. So I did want to highlight that and point that out. And then also just as a reminder, all the policies that come to us do go through that process where they are drafted and vetted by a team of school lawyers from various firms and administrators from various school districts throughout the state.
Thank you. Board members, any additional questions?
Either Julie or Dr. Schuler, could you confirm that relative to 627 guidance and counseling program policy, that all of our counselors already possess the required specialized certifications such that this won't have an impact on our staffing?
Yeah, they do.
Thank you.
They do.
Great. Any additional questions? All right, board, I need a motion and a second to approve the policy posting consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Jerpy. Second by Mr. Long. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. We have one policy approval consent agenda item for approval tonight. That's 2.260. Dr. Schuler, any additional information?
No additional information. That was posted last month. We received no comment on that policy, so we recommend you approve.
Thank you. Board, any questions? All right, board, I need a motion and a second to approve the policy approval consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Kulovitz. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paulson. Ms. Hutchinson, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right, we have 6 action items on the agenda tonight. The first action item is approval of municipal advisory agreement between CUSD200 and PMA Securities, LLC. Dr. Schuler?
Yeah, so Dr. O'Keefe's making his way up to the podium because I think actually the next 5 items on the action items all come from the business office. So I'm going to actually ask Dr. O'Keefe just to give you an overview of the first 2, this one and the one that's coming up next, because they're related and obviously both tied to referendum bonds that you will be approving right after the first of the year. So.
Thank you, Dr. Schuler. Another exciting night coming out of the business office for the board and the community. As Dr. Schuler mentioned, our first 2 items are specific to the referendum. So PMA Securities LLC is your municipal advisor. They've advised the district for almost a decade now. They were a part of the advisory services provided to the board back when the refinancing occurred in 2019. This is specifically a contract that will allow them to represent the board in the market when we issue debt. That's the specific role of the municipal advisor, and they do everything in terms of building relationship with those out in the field to make sure that the field and the market understands how valuable our debt is and why they should be interested in purchasing it, to setting up our debt schedules, to advising the board on when to pull the trigger or any other type of action items related to timing in the market as a whole. So it's a comprehensive service from PMA, and they have been your advisor of record. Second one, very similar conversation. Chapman & Cutler has been your advisor, your law firm, as it relates to any debt or refinancing issuances. Same time frame as PMA. As bond counsel, this specific approval, this agreement, engagement letter, allows them to begin working on all the necessary requirements, specifically your preliminary official statement, in advance of the issuance that goes out to the market. So we've got a process that happens where bond counsel puts together what is referred to as the POS. We review it, PMA reviews it, we bring any information back to the board that's necessary. Then once that statement is finalized, we go out to the rating agencies, go through that whole process. Once that's finished, there is a done version of the POS that is put out in the market, and that serves as the baseline for your debt issuance. So 2 different actions related to 2 organizations that have served you well in the past. Both of these are necessary to take the next step forward after approval of the referendum from the public.
Board, any additional questions? Go ahead.
Question.
Mhm.
I'm not sure my mic is on.
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're good.
Thank you, Brian. So I had a question that came up after reviewing the Finance Committee meeting notes that came after I submitted a question, so sorry. But can you just clarify for a novice, we have to revise the budget in May based on the referendum, if I'm understanding the notes from the Finance Committee correctly. How do we keep those monies separate? I'm not sure if this is the right place to ask the question, but maybe I should wait till the finance report. But how do we keep?
It's pretty simplistic. So when debt is issued, there will be a specific place where that debt goes and sits. It will be outside of our normal accounts.
But it's intermingled within our.
It is not intermingled within, so it will be built into your amended budget, which will come to you in the spring. And we do that for 2 reasons. One, because you're going to have more expenditures related to the overall referendum, costs with Perkins and Will consultants, things like that. And then 2, you're going to have this massive influx of revenue that's not been accounted for. That will be identified within your amended budget.
Okay, but it will be clear that.
Yes, yeah, there are specific, yes, it's not a commingling of revenues up top. There's a specific section in which any debt goes that it's identified outside of typical revenues.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
Any additional questions, board? All right, so I'm going to seek approval for the first 2 action items, okay, and then we'll go on from there. So, board, I need a motion and a second to approve the municipal advisory agreement between PMA Securities, LLC, and CUSD200 for bonds issued as a result of the approved November 2024 referendum as presented?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Rutledge,
Second.
second by Mr. Paulson. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. So now we're going to move to action item number 2, which we just covered. So I'm going, board, I need a motion and a second to approve the engagement letter for services as bond counsel and disclosure counsel with Chapman and Cutler LLP for bonds issued as a result of the approved November 2024 referendum as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson,
Second.
second by Ms. Kulovitz. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes. Our third action item tonight is approval of the 2024 tax levy. Dr. Schuler?
Yeah, so at your last meeting, Dr. O'Keefe presented the tentative levy to the board. That's been reviewed at 2 different finance committee meetings. So I guess similarly, maybe I'll pause here and give Mr. Long, if you want to give a quick update from finance committee. The first 2 items that we already approved were part of that, plus I think the final levy, and then the next 2 items related to the audit. So just any comments from finance committee?
Doing an amended budget, and it's I think not only is it a good practice because of the influx, but I think we're also required.
We're required.
Yeah. And the second thing is we will be doing an RFP for the audit. So Baker and Tilly, I think it's been 5 years, and so we'll be doing an RFP. I think we're doing that in January, so that'll be coming next month. And just a note on the financing and the relative to the middle school projects, remember we approved spending some money for some of the pre-work, and that money will get funded out of the initial bond proceeds, and that will come back in by the end of this fiscal year in June. So those were the only additional.
Great. So Dr. O'Keefe, any additional comments on the levy?
The presentation is exactly the same, except it says final, and the date has changed. So the only thing I want to point out to our audience and to the board is specifically what we are requesting in aggregate. And again, this is 2 pieces. This is operations and debt. Debt is defined. Operations, you are limited to CPI plus new construction. We're estimating new construction at $50 million. So if you look at what the year-over-year levy increase is, which is on the right, the operational levy increase is 4.66%. That's a combination of 3.4% for CPI plus what we're estimating for new construction, which is at $50 million. There's a slight decrease in your debt service fund year over year for a combined projected year-over-year increase of 4.25%. That is below the truth in taxation requirement of 5%, which is why there is not a truth in taxation hearing, or there was not one built into the beginning of tonight's schedule as a whole. But those final numbers are all calculated by DuPage County, so that we ask for what we legally can ask for, and then the final version of what the extensions are come directly from the county.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments?
I just have a quick comment. Can you go to slide 12 quickly? This, as you mentioned, was in your initial presentation.
Which one's slide 12?
It's the triangles with the EAV, CPI, and tax rate. And I've always found that very helpful to understand the tax levy, that how we take the tax levy and divide it by the property values, and essentially if that denominator changes, whether it's TIFs rolling off or EAV changing, that changes everyone's tax bills. And so after our last meeting, I think the point of this is the increases in the tax levy don't mirror increases in your individual tax bill. And so I went back and looked at my individual tax bill, and I noticed I moved here in 2016, and in that whole span of time, it's just been about a 5% increase, while obviously my home value has increased exponentially more and CPI has increased. So I just thought that was a helpful example to illustrate that the increase in the tax levy doesn't necessarily mirror what happens on your actual tax bill.
Thank you, Ms. Kolovitz. Any other questions or comments? All right, we're going to... yeah, go ahead, Dave.
More looking to next year, I saw the CPI came out, I think, at 2.7 for November was a little higher than was expected. Does that change, what we have in the projection for the 2025 levy?
We're actually projecting 3%. We anticipate we're going to end somewhere around there. Next month, the market is saying there might be a slight year-over-year monthly decrease, but right now CPI aggregate 12-month year-over-year is at 2.8, even though this month, previous month, November, was at 2.7 and was a minus 10 basis points over the prior year. That's just one piece of it. Then there's the aggregate when you look completely year-over-year at a 12-month time frame.
Any additional questions, Board?
Just a comment. This levy is consistent with what we assumed within our budget that we approved in September.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Board, I need a motion and a second to adopt as presented the resolution and certificates for the 2024 tax levy, execute the certificate of tax levy, and file all forms with the DuPage County Clerk.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Jerpy.
Second.
Second by Mr. Long. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. On to action item number 4, acceptance of the 2023-2024 financial audit and annual financial report. Dr. Schuler, any additional information?
Yeah, I'm going to also hand this right over to Dr. O'Keefe. I just want to say at the onset, obviously, annually every school district does an audit, right, an AFR. Really an opportunity to make sure you, every month, deal with a lot of financial information, and certainly I think the board is aware of the financial controls that we have in the district, but this is your opportunity every year to really test those financial controls and understand what it is that we're presenting to you. I want to thank Dr. O'Keefe and his staff, Mr. Thors, who really took us through the audit this year, did an amazing job of making sure that I think the auditors had the information they needed to be able to provide to you the report that they're asking you to accept this evening. So, Dr. O'Keefe.
Thank you, sir. So our partner in charge, our principal in charge is Nick Cavalier. He's right behind me. He's with Baker Tilly. So items 4 and 5 are together. So you have your annual financial reporting mechanisms, and then we have a single audit. And just a reminder for the public and the board, a single audit is when we receive more than, for any entity, any district that receives more than $750,000 in federal money, we receive way in excess of that, but it is a requirement to have 2 separate audit documents, and Nick is going to talk to you over the next 46 or 47 minutes about the audit itself.
I look forward to that.
I did bring all the reports, and I'm fully prepared to read them all. Thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Nick Cavalieri. I'm the partner in charge on the district's financial statement and single audit. I'm going to provide a very high-level overview of the audit results, but then I'm here to answer any questions that you may have on the financial statements themselves. We conduct an audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards. We provide assurances on the district's financial statements, the annual financial report. That's a required report to be submitted to the Illinois State Board of Education. It's a regulatory report. We conduct an audit in accordance with the Uniform Guidance Rules, or the single audit, which is a federal compliance audit that looks at internal controls over certain federal programs, and then also the compliance of the use of those dollars for those federal awards. The district is required to submit a document called a Consolidated Year-End Financial Report to the Grant Accountability and Transparency Unit of the state of Illinois. It's another agency. There's a document that has to have assurances from an external auditor as well. So the district is ultimately responsible for all of this financial information. The external auditor is responsible for providing an opinion on those documents. Pleased to let the board know that we rendered an unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements and all of those other documents that I referenced. An unmodified audit opinion is the highest level of assurance that you can receive from the external auditor that your documents and the financial statements were presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So a clean audit opinion. When it comes to the federal compliance audit, or the single audit, we render an opinion on your compliance and on the internal control testing that we performed over those programs. That particular audit also rendered an unmodified audit opinion. So a clean audit I will say that the availability of the information and how it's provided to us is exceptional. The business office really takes this process extremely seriously. We have a portal that we set up. Well in advance, we'll have touch points to talk about some of the information that's just the general nature of what we need to conduct the audit. But then, of course, the things that happen at the end of the year when the records are provided, that's really when we start to kind of roll up our sleeves and look through and perform our sampling, our testing procedures. We assist the district in preparing the financial statements, the year-end accrual adjustments to bring you to a GAAP basis, and then all the other documents that are associated with that. I would say that this audit went extremely well. I'm very pleased with the effort that we get from the business office. It's kind of a joke. We'll send an information request out there and then see how fast we get it back. It's almost instant. So I really do want to make sure that you're aware of just how important this process is to go well from everyone's effort in the business office. I can go through financial information. I know that you've had a kind of a pre-meeting, but I'm more than happy to talk through any questions that you may have in the audit process.
Board, any questions? Go ahead, John.
I understand you to say that you had no problems in terms of communicating, and you also found no particular obvious gaps in our procedures. Rita Crundwell is my standard question in this situation.
Yeah, so conducting an audit in accordance with governmental auditing standards, we gain an understanding of your internal control environment around the preparation of the financial statements. So key transaction cycles we'll look into. Your disbursement process, accounts payable and payroll. We'll look at your treasury function, how your bank reconciliations, your bank accounts are managed. We'll look at the financial close process, like month end, how adjusting journal entries are processed through the system, reviews that are conducted. We'll test journal entries. There's a lot of different audit procedures that we perform. During our initial stage, which is called our interim procedures, we'll gain an understanding of all the design of those internal controls. We'll perform a walkthrough. If we identify any deficiencies in controls that we believe rise to a level that are important for the board to know about or are of a material nature that identified errors in the financial statements or could potentially allow for an error to go to undetected, we'll report those to you. We did not report any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have one question. Thank you both, Brian. Thank you, Brian, and our auditors. Whose name I forgot. So, in going through the many pages that we were provided, I had some pre-questions. Brian took care of them. That was great. But I just thought of one that I didn't indicate. It's so. At some point in the document, it showed on a graph revenues received from the state and like projected to that date, and we have received less than what has been projected. Is that typical? I feel like that hasn't been typical.
So there's a line item that is in the financial statements, and it's a receivable, and it's called intergovernmental. And generally within that intergovernmental receivable line is money that's owed to the school district as of June 30 that may not have been received as of June 30. The state of Illinois has been pretty timely with a lot of their categoricals. So like the transportation money and other awards, they have been really timely with as of June 30. But certain other awards, you may claim the expense as of June 30 and then the money is received sometime before August 30th, for instance. That timing gap is essentially a receivable. Other federal awards can be subject to that because the district's required to submit those expenditure reports for the claims for the reimbursements as of July 15th for expenditures through June 30th. I would say generally speaking, collectively as a whole, throughout the state, we're seeing actually a decline in the level of receivables at year end at all the school districts that we work with. And a lot of that has to do with two things. One, the state of Illinois being extremely timely on making their payments, much better than historically in the past. And then two, a significant decrease in the pandemic aid funding that districts had available to them as those dollars are utilized and sunset as of September of 2024.
I have a question. I remember seeing it in the materials, but I'm not finding it now. I know that the state provides an assessment on basically district's financial health and takes into account various factors, and we've generally ranked very high on that. Has our assessment changed? And then can you also talk about the factors that go into that?
Sure. I can go into some of the factors that they use. I don't have last year's report with me, but I can speak in general terms. So there's essentially a 4.0 scale, and they look at your what they call the operating funds essentially within the annual financial report. That consists of your ed fund, your O&M fund, your trans fund, and then they also pull in the working cash fund. And they look at a series of ratios of your fund balance to revenue for those funds, the expenditures to revenue ratio, days of cash on hand, so your cash position divided by your expenditures within those funds, a percent of short-term borrowing that is available, and then a ratio of your long-term debt margin that's remaining. So there's a series of criteria that are assessed against various percentage ratios, and then they give you a score, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then you can get, I think it's recognition, God, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. Recognition, is there review? The worst one is watch. Right now, you have received recognition on the 2024 AFR. I can't believe
We were the same.
recognition.
We were the same last year.
As last year, right? Absolutely. You typically don't see big swings in these particular metrics, but it's just one metric to look at to see how the district is performing. This metric was built years ago, and every school district is assessed on it.
Just as a quick reminder, I think Dr. Keefe would probably say this, that I think we're 3.9, if I'm not
It is a
mistaken.
3.9, exactly,
And
yeah.
the only way that the board would actually get to a 4 would actually be if you exceeded what is the range in your fund balance policy. So in order to achieve the day's cash on hand, to be at a 4, we would be beyond what you've set in policy as kind of the top range of your fund balance policy, because you'd have to have that kind of cash on hand. So and kind of an intentional decision through that policy that we will never get to a 4. But again, I think you are in solid financial position.
If I could just follow up on that, is there any advantage to the 4 in terms of borrowing rates or anything else?
No. No.
Any other questions, board?
Just one comment about the, I'll call it the efficiency of the audit. I've dealt with, as a client of audits for a number of different firms over the years, and when you're not efficient, the accounting firms come back to you for more money because they're spending more staff time, they're going in and out. And so when everything is packaged as well as it is and responsive and they're ready to go, that does save us money. Because if it was inefficient and you spent more hours, you'd be, there's likely provisions that allow them to come back and ask for money to pay for the extra time. So that's a real cost avoidance, and so I think that credit to the business office for that should be recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Long. All right, so board, we're going to do action items 4 and 5. Thank you. So action item 4, board, I need a motion and a second to accept the 2023-2024 financial audit and annual financial report as prepared and presented by Baker Tilly U.S. LLP.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Long.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jerpy. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. On action item number 5, board, I need a motion and a second to accept the 2023-2024 single audit as prepared and submitted by Baker Tilly U.S. LLP.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Long.
Second.
Second by Mr. Jerpy. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. We're on to action item number 6, approval of the 2025-2026 and the 2026-2027 school calendars. Dr. Schuler, would you like to introduce the topic and share any additional information?
Yeah, at the your last meeting, Mr. Biskin presented the 2 years of calendar, shared the background information, most importantly shared the process for getting us to those calendars. They've been on display for the month. I think the board received some direct emails that are on identified on your email log, I think we received, Mr. Biskin directly received 7 additional comments directly from the community that have been provided to the board, covering a range of topics. Certainly some feedback on the Friday start, some feedback on kindergarten student first day on the Monday, kind of covered a range in really the grand scheme of calendar. We didn't receive a significant amount of feedback on this calendar. We've usually received significantly more as we're putting a calendar out, and I think as Mr. Biskin aptly said at the last meeting, calendar is one of those things that you can do anything with a calendar, you just can't do everything with a calendar. So for every change you make, there's some other area that's impacted, but on balance, we certainly recommend that you move forward with these 2 calendars. One last thing that I just want to mention is that while we're approving 2 years of calendar, we're doing that for the purpose of transparency and planning for the community. That does not mean that the board cannot come back and modify. If we try this first year of the calendar with the start on a Friday and don't find that it goes well, or you wish to make that, you can still come back in and modify certainly that 26-27 calendar. And just one other consideration with that, I think as we look at the specific construction schedule on the 3 middle schools, we've certainly left open the fact that one of those summers we might need to tweak a summer calendar as well, just to make sure we have the construction window that we do. So again, I'd mentioned that. I don't know that to be the case, but just want to make sure that the board is aware of the fact that what you're presenting 2 year, or you're approving 2 years, does not mean you can't come in and adjust that second year if need be. But Mr. Biskin, anything you want to add to that?
No. And then Dr. Schuler, if we were to make some tweaks and changes, that'd be done in a public meeting.
In
action items.
Because I think it would be important, just as the board has asked many times about process, I think if you're going to make a change, it should go through a process.
Agreed.
Right? It should go through a process very similar to how you approve it. I think one of the most challenging things that a board can do is establish a process and then kind of come in at the back end and kind of change outside of that. So I think you can make that, but I would recommend you follow the process that's established.
Board, any comments, thoughts you'd like to share?
Yeah, appreciate you calling out the ability to modify. While we, I think, had a fairly rigorous process in terms of soliciting student voice, community voice, educator voice, those surveys didn't necessarily include free-form input, and we've been getting some late input, including at the Coffee with the Board this past weekend. And while at this point I wouldn't say there's anything that's come in that has been consistent in terms of feedback. We've gotten a lot of feedback, varied feedback, sometimes contradictory feedback. More could still come in, and so I liked to acknowledge the fact that we have that flexibility. One specific thing that I would suggest we revisit, just because the question has come up quite a bit, is perhaps notating on the calendars that ISBE counts the Parent-Teacher Conference Day as an attendance day. That is one of the questions both throughout the course of the past year and through this process that has been somewhat consistent.
Sure. And we've historically heard that as well. You're right. Anyone else? I just wanted to say I really appreciate all the feedback. I know calendars are tough and they're personal, and giving feedback to the board, I know that sometimes that's not always easy, for people to come and talk to the board, but I do appreciate people taking the time to do it, sending your emails in, coming to the coffees, sending your email directly, filling out the survey, and we'll continue to do all of those things as we continue to revise and look at our calendars going forward. So I want everyone to know how important that feedback is, and that it was considered, and we looked at it, and it was not a exercise in rubber stamping. It was thoughtful. It was really thought through, and I appreciate everyone taking the time to provide that feedback. All right. Any other questions? All right, board. I need a motion and a second to approve the 2025, 2026, and the 2026-2027 school calendars as presented.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Paulson.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rutledge. Ms. Hutchison, will you please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Yes. We have one oral report tonight. and that's on behavioral wellness and CUSD 200. Dr. Schuler.
Yep, Dr. Salagi's making his way up to the podium. So I think as Dr. Salagi presents information regularly in front of the board on our SEL plan, behavioral wellness is one of the tenets of that framework that he's going to show you in just a second. And so this has been a conversation, I think, really coming out of the pandemic. We had a couple of years where kind of understanding what we were seeing with our kids from a behavioral perspective was a heightened topic, and we felt it important to give you an update kind of on where we're at and what we're seeing. So, Dr. Sloggy.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Schuler. Good evening, board members. Excited to talk a little bit about behavioral wellness tonight, and I'm going to start with our SEL framework. It's kind of a place where I always start anytime we're talking about social emotional learning or anything that falls underneath it, and certainly behavioral wellness does. For context, I just want to give our overarching definition of what behavioral wellness is. If you go down to the bottom of the framework, starting with the belief statement, this framework was developed in 2018-19 by several stakeholders within the district. And one, that behavior is shaped by providing clear expectations through direct teaching, modeling, monitoring, and giving both positive and corrective feedback. And then really four core components of behavioral wellness. There's creating and maintaining a safe school environment, school-wide guidelines for success, which are really expectations for success, effective classroom management, and really being proactive around behavioral practices. Everything within our SEL framework is really framed around research and best practice around what is going to help our kids accelerate learning and accelerate social emotional growth. So, why even have behavioral wellness as a part of your SEL program? Why even have it a part of what we do in schools? Really, this ties to creating an optimal learning environment. So what's an optimal learning environment? If we're going to dig even a little bit deeper into behavioral wellness, kind of four components we want to have in that optimal environment. We want to have clear expectations. We want to have safety. We want kids to be connected. And we want it to be engaging from a learning perspective. So if I'm a student, if you look at the parentheses there, if I'm a student, the questions that I should be able to answer are, what do I need to do to be successful in this school and in this class? Do I feel safe? Do I feel connected? Am I engaged in learning? And a celebration to start with, a few pieces of data that our kids are telling us, right? If you look at our most recent 5 essential survey, District 200 ranks in the 96th percentile for supportive environment. Included in that supportive environment is things like safety. Actually, there's an extensive area on safety. So a lot of districts within the state of Illinois to be in the 96th percentile tells us that we're starting from a place of strength. Also tells us there's always areas we know that we can get better. I think the best time to get better is when you're operating in a place of strength. On the connection piece, 96% of our students surveyed being reported, that have been surveyed report being connected to school through a trusted adult. And as you know, we're always striving to get all of our kids connected to school. And then third, when we think about engagement in the ambitious instruction area, our kids tell us that we're doing really well there too. District 200 ranks in the 95th percentile amongst all Illinois school districts for our students' reports on ambitious instruction, and there's certainly several questions in there that are highlighted around student engagement. So that optimal learning environment is really the purpose of behavioral wellness, because our whole goal in schools is to help kids grow academically, and this is an underlying support for that.
Dr. Salagi?
Yeah.
I'm correct in interpreting that supportive environment includes the 3 subscores of teacher safety, student safety, and classroom disruptions, correct? Those are all embedded in that metric.
I don't believe teacher-reported safety is in that metric. There's some questions around how teachers feel and act that might fall under effective leadership. Okay. Student safety is definitely, but I'd have to give you more specifics on that. But
okay, thank you.
So the majority of the time tonight that I'm going to talk to you, I'm going to talk about behavioral wellness from an early childhood through 5th grade focus. I will hint on and give you some insights into 6 through 12. But to be really specific, we've spent a lot of our time and a lot of our efforts at the elementary level and at the EC5 level. Really, one, knowing that when you start early, right, you hope to get your biggest payoff and bang for your buck on the back end as well, so that our kids in grades 6 through 12 are fully prepared as they move through school to be in an optimal learning environment. And when we think about that, right, two pieces that we've spent a lot of time on that I'm going to break down for you are actually two more frameworks, right? You're thinking, well, we have an SEL framework. We also have two really in-depth frameworks around behavior. We have a school-wide framework and we have a classroom framework. And we have spent years on extensive training and implementation for these frameworks within our schools and within our classrooms at the elementary level and at the early childhood level. You'll see you have a handout within there too. It's double-sided. One side is our school framework, one side is our behavioral framework. And I want to just touch on the core components of what we desire, what we believe we fully implemented in all of our EC through 5th grade schools. When we think about an optimal behavioral school, right? A school that's functioning at a really, really high level that's going to give kids the greatest chance to be successful. The first component is having really, really clear school-wide expectations. And schools to do this have to teach those expectations. They have to establish them first. Things like, how do you demonstrate respect? How do you demonstrate responsibility? How do you demonstrate safety? All those different pieces, right? You have to establish those, but you have to teach them on a continual basis. They need to become a part of your culture. But then you also have to have a process for recognizing those behaviors amongst your students. School safety and physical environment is a key component of our framework. This has everything to do with implementing your safety and emergency protocols, having quality supervision at all common times, doing your audits of your common areas to make sure that they're safe from a physical standpoint, and then having a really clear protocol for responding to significant behavior, because that ties into school safety and physical environment. And in all these areas, if you were to break out any one of those small bullet points, you'd see underlying plans that all of our schools have established in these areas. And then lastly, maybe the one that's most familiar with the board, that at least that I talk a lot about with, is teacher-student relationships. But this isn't just something that we say. We actually want to be really, really systematic about it from a school perspective. So we expect all of our schools to have a systematic process for ensuring or working towards having each student have a trusted adult in their school. At the school level, we aim to have a 5-to-1 ratio of positive interactions. So what that means for a kid is that any time that they are in our schools, simply an adult saying hello to them, asking them how they're doing, giving them positive feedback, whether it's their classroom teacher, another teacher passing them in the hallway, the principal, we're trying to have a high ratio of positive interactions so that when a student may misbehave or we have to redirect that student, we've already told them, you don't have to misbehave to get my attention. You're going to get my attention because I care about you. They're more apt to receive that feedback. So our schools are trying to wrap around our students and have those type of feedbacks, and I think the feedback from our kids is indicative of that culture they created. And then lastly, we want our schools to utilize clubs, activities, and events to ensure school connectedness. This is our school-wide framework that all of our schools at the elementary level have implemented. The second piece is our classroom framework, right? So the way to look at this would really be to say an ideal environment for a classroom that's going to hopefully maximize learning and maximize the student experience is going to have these core components in place. Again, it's almost a microcosm of the school-wide framework. Really clear classroom expectations. Ideally, you want those classroom expectations tied to the school-wide expectations. You want kids really, really engaged in learning. The physical environment now comes down to, hey, are there transition areas that are clear? Can we clearly see the board? Is there a space for kids to decompress if needed? That student-teacher relationship at the teacher level is the most foundational work. So in the classroom, we want our teachers working towards a 3-to-1 ratio of positive interactions. And we really want our kids, obviously, to know that they're cared for within the classroom. And then feedback, being really, really specific on how we are giving our kids feedback, making sure that it's provided in a calm and consistent manner, especially when misbehavior occurs, so that it's not erratic, so that kids know what to expect. The whole goal around this work is consistency in expectations from classroom to classroom, from year to year. Our elementary students are with us for 6 years. When we have that consistency in what's expected, right, we actually become more efficient in our ability to help kids learn and grow. That's the goal. We're always working towards that, and this framework kind of provides the guardrails for it, and then still allows our schools to be really, really unique in how they implement some of this work. So just talking about the implementation process of this, we have done extensive training in both of these areas from a district perspective, bringing our schools together. All of our EC through 5th grade schools have school-based leadership teams comprised of 6 to 8 staff members and our principals. They come together multiple times throughout the year with myself, our behavioral specialists, a gentleman who leads our psychology department as well. We do pretty extensive training in this area, and then they go to their buildings and really work to implement this work. This is also implemented in our school improvement plan. So just like our schools have goals in math and ELA, also within the component of our school improvement plan, there's a full annual Tier 1 behavioral implementation plan. This is where our schools are looking at those frameworks and saying, hey, we're doing really well here, but we need to get better here, or we want to amp this up, or we need to revisit this. So all of that piece is really a part of their goal work. And then we have multiple monitoring feedback loops. Those school-based leadership teams actually serve as monitoring teams. They're also a feedback loop for us because we're meeting with them throughout the year. Members on those teams are not only classroom teachers, but we have social workers, psychologists on those teams. So through the department meetings, we have a feedback loop. And then obviously through our monthly principal meetings, we have a feedback loop as well. Last feedback loop to monitor this work, myself, Mr. Biskin, meet with all of our principals actually, not just at our elementary schools, on a quarterly basis to talk through student discipline, behavior at the elementary level. A big piece of it is talking about their implementation of this, and then all their interventions and supports pieces that are in place. So there's a good cycle to monitor and keep this work moving forward. So what I gave you there was the foundation of what behavioral wellness is. That's the foundation, right? We put that in place so that our hope is we're giving every kid kind of everything that they need. In addition to that, though, we have some really quality early proactive programming and strategies that can help kids really function well in school, right? One, I talked about having a really safe and supportive learning environment. Student connectedness is the foundation, but we never want to discount the amazing programs that we have. Let's start with Jefferson Early Learning Center. We have about 350 students in the programs there. That's giving students a head start, right, in a preschool experience so that when they come to kindergarten, they're ready to function, right, or they've had that experience. We have a Head Start preschool program through our Early Learning Collaborative. We actually have 100 students within our elementary schools, preschool age, that qualify to come to preschool. We actually, the Head Start program uses our space, but they are District 200 students. So we have 5 sections of 20 preschool students that are getting an early learning experience. And many of those students come with risk factors as well. So giving them that head start typically is giving them that kind of first step that they need to be successful in kindergarten, which is going to benefit them. But it's really going to benefit all of our students, right? Because then we have a lesser chance of significant behavioral disruptions and a more optimal learning environment. You've heard me talk about Camp Kinder before. This is an opportunity that we're giving to students for a week-long, really behavioral type camp. This is mainly for students who actually have not ever been in school. So we believe when we have students for a good amount of time, we can really get them in a good place. But we also have many students that move in and out and are mobile. And many times there are students who have not been to school and they're coming to register to kindergarten for the first time. We want to get them into Camp Kinder, make sure that they're coming to school a week early before the school year starts, getting to know their kindergarten teacher and at least learning those early routines before they're in an environment with 300-400 students. We want to make sure we're teaching those early pieces. And then some of our proactive programs that focus around decision making at the elementary level and on up through. You know that we've implemented the DARE program. Our student and teacher feedback has told us that that's improved decision making for kids, which obviously ties to behavior. We've been really, really clear about things that we want our kids or that we don't want our kids saying or doing. These are statements and things that could get kids in trouble, maybe when they're not thinking really clearly. So we want to make sure we're really clear around things that you can't say or do in school. And then obviously our health curriculum all the way on up through high school is really clear on decision making and being a proactive program and strategy that ties to behavior. So what does some of our information tell us in the behavioral space, right? I would say that from a database perspective, most of our students, or the majority of our students, are thriving with the tier 1 supports and the positive supports that I've just outlined for you here in the last 10, 15 minutes. A few pieces of data, our SABRS risk screener that we do 3 times a year, right, tells us about 93% of our students are low risk for academic, emotional, behavioral factors. If you think about a tiered level of support, that's typically what would be considered typical would be having about 80 to 85% of your students in the green. And you can see we're above that, and we've trended that way over the past few years as well. And the same thing in those some risk and high risk categories. A discipline piece from the secondary level. So we're not halfway through the year, but we're getting closer and closer to that. At this point, in grades 6 through 12, 8.9% of our students have had one discipline referral or event, meaning there's been a discipline incident where they've needed to either be referred to the dean's office, assistant principal, principal, for some sort of discipline event. So if you took 100 kids in a middle school or a high school, roughly 9 of them, or a little less than 9 of them, have had one discipline event. We know that having that discipline event is not the only way that students learn, right, from getting that consequence, but less than, what we're really trying to do is not have repeat offenders. Less than 1% of our students have more than 3 referrals this year at the 6th grade level. And so as Mr. Biskin and I have met with our secondary leadership teams and behavioral teams, these are numbers that we're certainly comfortable with and are manageable as we work through this piece. So.
Excuse me, what is SABRS?
It's a social, academic, emotional, behavioral screening that our teachers complete 3 times a year that's tied really to risk factors for academics, emotion, or behavior. If a student was in that some risk or high risk piece, we would be working closely or looking more closely to say, is there other things should be looking at? It also serves as a place for us to make sure that we're not missing any students, right? So it's just another layer of assessment in that area. It's a brief rating survey that takes about 30 seconds to a minute for our classroom teachers to fill out on a student.
Just a quick question on SABRS. Is that a state assessment, or is that a third-party vendor?
No, it's with our FastBridge suite that we have through really on the academic side. They also offer this instrument, which is considered to be valid and reliable as well.
With regard to the discipline referrals, can you speak a little bit about the scope of what's encompassed under discipline referral?
Yeah, a wide range, really, Mr. It could be anything from something very minor, right? Maybe it's inappropriate behavior in the hallway, from running and maybe yelling or something along those lines, to could be extreme disrespect towards a staff member. It could be an incidence of being physical. So a very wide range. However, I will tell you the lower level behaviors, right? On the first instance, we want our teachers really working with students to try and connect with them, but it could be a repeated low level behavior that could be referred as well.
Have you been tracking those over time? Like the 8.9 we're at now, do you know what
Yeah, we've really dialed in and honed in on these over the past 2 years with our new 5 lab system. So we've got a pretty detailed system that Mr. Biskin and I work closely on and that our schools enter into. So we're able to pull up really quickly now all the referrals, do some really deep dives on the data, and that's really the point of our quarterly meetings when we sit down with those teams. We're looking at that data. But this, I would say, this data has been consistent now for the past 2 years when we look at it, right? We've always tracked discipline, but with our new system, this is where I say we're in a really solid place with this data.
I was going to ask the same thing. So do you think prior, like going back even further, do you feel that it's about the same? It's been consistently about 8.9%. I guess my concern is, like, if we've embedded standards and expectations, 8.9% seems kind of high. So has it consistently been 8.9%?
Yeah, you know, I like I said, I've had this data for 2 years, so for me to be, I wouldn't be in a place to comment on that other than saying you know, from my experiences, I was not only an elementary principal, I worked at the middle school level as well. You know, 9 out of 100 students, right? And if I've got a building of 500 or 600, that's 40 or 50 students that may have made a poor choice. And again, considering not all of those discipline referrals are not extreme instances either, right? There are a time when maybe they've had to talk to an assistant principal. Maybe there was a missed recess or something along those lines. Obviously, there's more extreme ones. So to say having one discipline referral, I can tell you from talking also with our teams right now. Now, again, we've only had one of those meetings. We've got the next round of those meetings coming up. They're feeling that we're in a good place, that we're not tracking above where we're at. Many times the story has been we're definitely in a better place than we've been. So that's what I would base it off of right now, only having the really 2 years of consistent data. Yeah. I'm going to keep moving along here. So again, what I kind of gave you there was like overview for all students, but we know that there are still, our role is we have to serve all students, and we know that some students may need more, right? And so there's a lot of different things we do for students that may need more in the behavioral space. One example is having a behavioral intervention plan. We have behavioral specialists within our district. Those plans are pretty thorough to support students, but also to support the school and to support the learning environment. Typically behavior, there's a reason behind it, so we want to find out that reason behind it, right? And part of that work is doing a functional behavioral assessment to find out what is the targeted behavior, why is it happening, what are the specific interventions we have tried and that we need to retry or do differently, and then really how are we working closely with parents in this plan as well. So that's one piece that some of our students have, not a large amount, but I will tell you that the individual needs of our students, right, when there is an escalated behavior, that is something that we work really, really hard on to try and work through and make sure that we have a support plan for that student, and that we're also making sure that we're still maintaining that optimal learning environment. Another piece for students that may need more, you'll see our total count of social workers, psychologists, counselors, our emotional behavioral wellness staff, and our behavioral specialists. You can see a consistent increase in that staffing pattern right now. Those folks work in a variety of roles, especially across our system. Some of them work with very specific groups of students. Some of them also impact the total building work. Many of them have been instrumental in the Tier 1 behavioral work we've talked about, but also some of them also work very closely with our special education programs as well. We've also recently, right around the 2020 year, we added the emotional wellness program to help our hospitalized students transitioning in and out of school. That we also added a behavioral component to that as well. So you can see that there's been a consistent commitment in this space as well.
Can I ask a question about that? So I know beforehand I asked you some questions about this. Are these numbers early childhood through high school?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then from the year 2020 to current, I believe we've had a decrease in our total population of our total census, our total number of students, but yet we have such an increase in behavioral support staff. Is this something we should be concerned about? Like,
yeah. I think that's a great question, right? And certainly, well, I think the whole system from a behavioral space is in a better place than it's been previous years. One of the, I think the continued challenges are when we look at, let's take the 93% that I said are probably in a good space. Some of the more intense needs that we've seen, and especially post 2020, there were some years where we saw some really intense behavioral needs, especially at the younger levels, but across the system. So these numbers are indicative of supports for individual students. Sometimes they could be increased in programming for our instructional level programming in the special education space. So even though you may see a decrease in the total enrollment, there could be an increase in specificity and intensity of behavior in speaking with our special education department, and even with our leadership there, right? That's a trend that's been seen statewide and nationwide from a behavioral space. So part of this is a response to that as well.
And please don't get me wrong, I'm happy that we are having the support
Sure.
that we need.
No, I think it's a great question.
Want to continue to support that. Are we concerned that we're going to continue to see that increase, or?
I can't predict the future, but what I can tell you is, I talked about those feedback and those monitoring loops, and then obviously looking at our data as well. And I believe we're in a better place than we've been post 2020 than we've ever been, right? At least hearing from this first semester, right? We hear feedback from our principals and assistant principals that the consistent challenge is, yes, meeting the needs of some individual students, but that we're turning a good corner in this space. So I can't predict that future, but I can tell you we have a lot of systems in place to monitor and be responsive to it, and we've got systems in place to be proactive to it as well.
And I appreciate that. They're in place. If we get to a point where we are doing really well, I wouldn't want to see those supports removed, if that makes sense.
It does.
Thank you.
Thanks. And again, just a few other pieces for students that may need more. So I'm kind of painting the picture of the intensity and response when there is behavior incidents. Obviously, we have a student discipline handbook. Consequences are a part of our response to behavior and are necessary, certainly. They are not the only piece, though. Tied with those consequences, we want to work really closely with parents, right? Behavior starts, or certainly the parent expectations and parent response and our partnership with them can have a huge impact for the student, right? We provide a lot of different individual supports and accommodations within our schools. That could be a whole separate presentation on the type of work that our specialists do with different groups and with different individual students. There's students that have 504 plans, individual education plans. For some of our students that need care outside of school, whether it be in the behavioral space or emotional space, you've heard me talk about referral GPS. That partnership's been really valuable for us. Our parents access that outside site very frequently. We actually had one of the highest user hits on that, so we know that it's being marketed and used well. And then we have some very, very specific programs from a special education perspective, instructional programming, and again, a very small percentage of our students are in our instructional programs. And even more intense than that, we have outplacement at times for significant behavior. Again, rare instances, but my goal in taking you through this presentation is to show you all the way down to meeting the needs of our most specific or most needy or intense students. This is an overview of actually some of our programs where behavior, not to say that behavior may not occur in some of our other instructional level programs. We have other programs such as Essentials and SAIL, such as Essentials and PISA, but I did want to highlight Skills and SAIL, because Skills is really a program that's designed really to provide intensive services for the social emotional side, executive functioning, and behavioral skills. SAIL's designed really more for students who have delays in that social interaction, communication, really may also come with some significant academic deficits. Two different pieces where you could see behaviors coming there. Obviously, Skills is going to be more of the emotional behavioral side. SAIL is going to be a behavior many times as a result of lack of communication skills or a deficit in that area. And as you can see, we've seen an increase, obviously, in our SAIL programming. That's an elementary level program. Again, in looking into that and saying, why is this? Multitude of reasons. I don't think it would be one specific piece. We've seen a trend across the country in students that are needing programming and supports like ours that are available in our SAIL program. We've also had not only from Jefferson, so they're getting supports early, but we're also getting sometimes move-ins that are needing the support. So we've been adaptive, and we have added programming in this area. And it's always with the goal of giving the students what they need and also trying to maintain an optimal learning environment within our schools.
SAIL programming, what age grade levels does that cover?
Elementary, so any of our elementary grades, yeah.
And the 6 sections spread across the district?
Yeah, they're actually spread across 3 of our school sites. Yep.
Have the numbers of students in those 6 sections, have they increased? Does that, like the number of students in a particular classroom?
Yeah, they vary year to year and by grade level, right? So typically those classrooms, I don't think are going to have more than 12, but usually 10 to 12. But in a particular year, they may start with 6 or 7, and And then throughout the year, you know, a student may be working through those intervention processes, and it may be determined that they need that support. That program could end up going to 8, 9, 10 throughout the year. So it varies year to year, and it varies program by program, something our special education directors watch closely, though. Yeah.
For the SAIL program in particular, you mentioned that it was for the elementary age. What happens when they transition to middle school? Is there a consistent program, or is it varied programs?
Yeah, I'm going to let Mrs. Murphy talk about that transition there.
So at Monroe and Hubble are the two locations where those students that are in the SAIL programming move on to, and they're included as part of the Essentials programming.
Melissa, is there placement between Monroe and Hubble dependent on what elementary school they come from? Or is it per?
It can be, but it also is dependent on the student needs. So generally looking at putting together classroom compositions to meet student needs.
I guess I'm just, thank you, I appreciate that. Is the goal to have the students end up in their home high school, or as much as is possible? Okay.
Absolutely a consideration as part of those conversations.
I spoke about our district discipline support team. This has been a key process for Mr. Biskin and I, and another team member as well within our district. Just meeting with our schools as that touch point. We've got 20 schools, but we get out to all of them. I feel like I'm going to one of these meetings every day, but it's so beneficial to hear from our principals, to hear from our assistant principals, our deans, and listen to what's going well, what are their challenges. It also gives us an opportunity to share strategies that we have learned from other schools, to give insights. It's also an opportunity to say, what do you need as well, to identify supports. That's also the place where we identify themes, things that we may be seeing. How are we responding? Are we consistent in our response? All those different pieces are happening through this shared dialogue. So this is a process that we established last year at our 6 through 12 level. This year we've expanded it to our elementary level. Key strategies, these are some of the strategies that you would see on your work plan for Vision 2026. They're certainly in my SEL space, but all of these tie to continued work in ensuring that our kids are doing well behaviorally. And I take you back, all of this work really focused around the optimal learning environment, right? Are our kids safe? Are they connected? Are they engaged in learning? Are we doing everything we can really so that we can impact learning, impact their experience so that they can grow and be their best self? They've got to have a really great learning environment for that, right? And behavior plays really, really closely into that. But as we move forward, right, really clearly, some of the considerations and things that are on our minds as we plan ahead are meeting individual needs, right? So those specific individual needs are still things that we want to be responsive to, that we want to continue to work to meet. We've got an increased McKinney-Vento population, right? So that's our homeless population, which would be determined homeless, right? We've continued to see increases in that population, especially over the past 2 years. So certainly when there's not that consistency at home for a student, there's higher risk factors for significant behavior in school. Tied a little bit to that as well. Our mobility rate, right? Well, we don't have a significantly high mobility rate when students are mobile, right? Or when we have a move-in, many times as we're working with our schools, initially some of our behavioral concerns may be coming from move-ins, right? Once we get our students into our system and we're able to work with them and give them some consistent time, we're able to intervene and support. But that's always a continued consideration. And then continuing the work that we're doing.
Question about the move-ins. What is the relationship with other districts in terms of providing records and data that supports maybe recognizing what challenges we may face before we experience them ourselves?
Sure. So are you saying when an individual student moves in?
Yeah, do we typically have a transfer of records from whatever district they came in from?
We do. The parent has to give, part of that process is the parent giving consent. So once we have that consent, we're able to communicate right away with the student's school. So that's a process that is very, I would just say, typical and in place in our schools. Yeah, great question. Obviously, other considerations, just continuing the work that we're doing, right? We've got a a full plate and I think really good momentum in this space and all of our SEL space, but we want to continue to work at it and get better and be responsive and proactive. And then last piece is the partnerships with parents and community, right? We've got a few things planned this ahead. We've got a wellness symposium in March that's going to be available to our whole community that we're partnering with about 5 or 6 other local districts. We're looking at some other speaking opportunities, but probably more important than any of that stuff is really just the partnerships we have at the school level that our providers at the school, that our teachers have with parents. Like, the better that relationship is, and I really think we work really, really hard at that, the better it's going to be for our kids and for our community. That's all I got. I'll take any questions if you have any.
All right, board, any additional questions?
I would just ask, I'm not sure we've got a numbered page, but the support staff, showing the number of support staff going back to 1920 and comparing that to now, significant increase in support staff. Has our enrollment been pretty steady during that period, or is that consistent with the support staff count?
Yeah. No, we've seen some dips, and then we've seen a kind of a comeback up here, but we have seen some more intense needs. So if I draw that to some individual needs that we've seen, right, we've seen a little rise there, especially post-2020. So while enrollment, typically this allocation is not always going to tie directly to student enrollment, but probably be based a little bit more upon student need, right? So we have seen an increase in needs, and even if you tie that to the programs I showed, an increase in those programs as well.
So on a per capita basis, we are increasing our support.
We are.
Yeah, definitely. We can get that for you. I've got a document that'll show you historical enrollment, so I can share that with the board.
The trend is the important thing there.
Yep.
Just more to the board to add something for future discussion. I think this somewhat definitely comes under behavioral. Looking at our phone and technology use policy. So I'm not sure if we've decided that, like, what agenda that's going to be on, but just again for a future agenda.
Sure. And we can certainly discuss that. So one, we're doing some work both with your Citizens Advisory Committee around that topic. Actually, your student ambassadors have some feedback that I've given them from CAC. So at our last CAC meeting, they identified a series of questions that they were curious in getting information both from students, teachers, and some of our mental health support staff to kind of understand. So I guess we can bring it to the board at any point. I'd encourage you to kind of let us get that feedback and kind of bring it to you all together, and then that's something we can certainly have a conversation around.
Thank you. It's just good to know it's coming. So thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Dr. Sluggy? All right, thank you. All right, board, we kind of covered the committee reports as we were going through the previous action items, so I'm going to move on from those. Just as a reminder, oh wait, I missed we have actually reports from other board members. Do you guys have any other things you'd like to report? I know Mr. Rutledge has a few things to say, but others are welcome as additionally.
You want me to start?
You may as well, yeah.
Well, I've had the opportunity to visit with each of my 3 adopted schools in the last month or so. I attended, it was mentioned earlier, the Duquesne Art Exhibition on November 2nd. There were 7 categories of artwork, and in those 7 categories, a District 200 students picked up 5 first places, and then 1 second, 1 third, and 6 out of the 19 honorable mentions were our students. And I was told that only 2% of the art students actually were there to exhibit, so this was kind of the cream of the cream. I think most of us attended the Illinois Association of School Boards meeting, about 125 different sessions as I counted, and I was able to attend several what school board members should know about English learners, the art of school boarding, school safety and student discipline conundrums. So you want to stay out of jail, ethics for all, and I'd like to stay out of jail.
That's a good thing.
Building a foundation for school safety. We had a lot of good opportunities here, but the interesting thing I found is I felt like our staff could have taught all of them. We're so far ahead of so many other districts. And I just would congratulate our staff, and Jeff and the team that you've put together deserve commendations for that. And then some of us attended Dave and I attended the Pack the Gym event the other evening, and I'm not sure who had the most fun there. The audience enjoyed it. The Flying Tigers lost 36-14, I think was the final score. You were there, Jeff. Yeah. But I think probably the one that had the most fun of all was the referee. And then this morning, the Wheaton Warrenville, the Wheaton North High School chamber choir came and sang at our Rotary meeting, and they did a terrific job. It's just amazing music that they gave us. So, and I believe next Tuesday night is the big extravaganza for is that Edmund Chapel, I believe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a wonderful evening. So, yes.
Yeah, thank you, John. I'd also just add to the conference, when our staff presents, they didn't this year in previous years, those rooms are always jammed, which just reinforces your perspective. So it's nice to hear that. Thank you for sharing. Any other reports from board members?
I can go. Like John said, I was at the Pack the Gym. It's always just a fun night, and it is. I agree. Everybody is smiling throughout, and it's just a really fun event, and to watch those kids just sucking up the limelight. I agree about I'll just touch on the courses I went to. I tried to do a little bit in different areas. Same English learner, one with John, AI in education. Key thing there was on protecting data and making sure we're not compromising skill development. There were 2 keynote addresses I attended. The first one was a little interesting. It was a music guy, not as powerful in terms of the message as the second one on trust, but still some good stuff and some good passion. Top 10 legal mistakes. So, the key takeaway there was follow policy. If you follow policy, you'll stay out of trouble. I went to one, safety lessons learned from Parkland, and it was a committee of 4 folks. 2, I think, were from the Illinois Association of School Boards, and 2 were administrators in different parts of the state. And you could tell they actually went before the building was torn down and toured, and tell how impactful it was to them to see that. And the key takeaways from there: site assessments, threat assessments, reunification. Like John said, I know those things. Those were kind of best practices, and I know we're doing those. And then I went to one on the dynamic duo of foundations, and mostly my wife works with the Student Excellence Foundation, so I was wanting to see if there was any learnings to share with her, and just different ways of fundraising, I guess, was key. But really good use of time. And this year they had more classes on Friday, which was really good because they're packed in the Saturday. And I think I either did 2 or 3 on Friday, and usually you're lucky to get 1. So
yeah, it's great.
Good change.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Just wanted to share as well the sessions that I went to at the IASB conference. And I just always really appreciate this conference and the professional development that we do for this role, that there's so many unique areas and aspects to the district that we might not have professional expertise in. And so I think the development here is really important. But my sessions were on English language learners, a session on governance, a session on special education students, one on safety, the same one that John went to, and then also one on engaging with the community. So I always try and hit on, variety of topics, and took lots of notes, and appreciated the training.
Thank you.
Also, with regard to the joint annual conference, and this will somewhat dovetail into suggestions for future discussions, also attended a variety of topics, really in the areas of student learning, finance, safety, community engagement, and inclusion. Lots of great learnings. To John's point, seeing how far we are ahead of some other districts, but there's always things to learn from others. And so I would suggest that perhaps in a future session, whether it's in a workshop or committee of the whole setting, to my surprise, I heard that some districts use their OMA exception for closed session with a ISB rep to fold it into self-improvement topics, but in some sort of forum for us to talk about key learnings and share with one another what we've heard and just discuss that as a group. So
You mean from the conference?
yes.
Got it.
So again, either committee of the whole or some other forum, but I think there would be a lot of good learnings. We couldn't all be to every session. It's a chance for us to exchange ideas.
Thank you, Eric. Any other topics from board members? All right. Remember, there are 4 written reports that are in our on our electronic agenda that are posted there. The monthly financial reports, our FOIA report, our board communication log, and then the Citizens Advisory Committee report. We have so far 2 topics for future discussion on the list: the 5-year financial projections and the middle school capital projects. We heard from Ms. Blattner. You know, we've documented and recorded this idea that we want, once the work has progressed, the pre-work has progressed, to address cell phones and talk about that at a future session. Any other topics that board members want added? All right. Our next regular meeting will be on January 8th at 7 o'clock at the Jefferson Early Childhood Center. Our next committee of the whole meeting will be in January 22nd, 2025, by the way, at 7 p.m. at the School Service Center. So there being no further action to come before the board in open session. Board, I need a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Long.
Second.
Second by Mr. Paulson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Our meeting is adjourned. Happy holidays, everybody.